Hi, my name's Felix, and I have another thing that I want to express my opinion on. The other day, my friend sent to our group chat a link to this ad they had been getting for, I'm not sure what exactly it was, but it was kind of in the format of a webcomic. And, oh my god, I don't know how it was allowed on YouTube. So, the little ad was called Stop It, Mr. Wolf. It was like 45 seconds long. It had, at the time, the last time I checked before it got taken down, because it did get taken down, and I'll talk about that later, it had about 200,000 views. And what the ad depicted was, I think it was a webcomic. And it was little snippets of this comic, and what it was illustrating was a non-consensual sexual interaction between two men. The dialogue makes it very clear that what was happening was non-consensual. One of the characters says no 3 times, which in itself is disturbing, but I think it illustrates a deeper problem. I've gotten some webcomic ads in my time on YouTube, and they're always 2 male characters, so this isn't like an isolated incident. And a lot of webcomics seem to focus on gay relationships. But I believe, and my argument in this video is, a lot of webcomics are written around stereotypes of gay men. But the thing is, their audience is mostly teenage girls. And in sharing these stereotypes to a group of young women, basically, they're perpetuating a lot of harmful ideas about gay men and gay relationships that harm people in real life. Scrolling through the comments on the video, I think there were 150. Some of them I have screenshots, I'll read them. One person said, "This is too perfect not to watch." Another comment says, "He said no, LMAO." Another person said, "I know you watched it more than once, 'cause so did I." If I can figure out how to put these on the screen, I'll try. Another one says, "You can't escape the gay thoughts." Another one, and my personal favorite, "Inhales deeply. That some good ass shit." The fact that the people who make these chose this non-consensual relationship to advertise their comic, because an advertisement is a draw. You put in the most exciting part of your content to draw people in. If this is how they're advertising their content, then the draw for webcomics like these, webcomics, is the sexual interaction between 2 male characters. While there's no inherent problem with a comic about sexual relations between male characters, if it's being presented as a spectacle, a large scale, then it's symptomatic of a larger problem in the webcomic community. But first, to understand this, we need to talk about webcomics as a whole. Wikipedia defines webcomic as comics published on a website or mobile app. Basically your traditional webcomic format, but they're released once a week, and they're on a website. Webcomics, as normal comics are pretty appealing to younger audiences, and the format is really accessible. I think practically anyone can publish a webcomic, which means that it's pretty free form and you can write about whatever you want. Because of this, a lot of webcomics are focused on LGBT content. When I searched webcomic demographics, a lot of the suggestions were related to LGBT things, like assigned male webtoons, female to male webtoon, webtoons with ace characters, who is the LGBT character in Let's Play, etc. So obviously there's a pretty strong correlation between webcomics and LGBT content. There are a lot of reasons why this could be a good thing. LGBT representation at all, when it's positive, is great, and to have that accessible to younger audiences would be amazing. They see relatable characters, and it's an easy format for younger children to digest, because a lot of webcomics is a lot of visual elements. It works. A lot of young people look at webtoons. Webtoon is the website that I'm going to be using as a template for the demographics of people who read webcomics, since I couldn't find a larger scale webcomics demographic. But the self-reported statistics from Webtoons, which is a large webcomic website, they say that their audience is roughly people from ages 14 to 24, and that their audience is 64% female. So if we're going to apply this to webcomics as a whole, we're going to temporarily, for the sake of this argument, assume that the majority of webcomics viewers are teenage girls. There's no inherent issue with this until you think about the content of the webcomics themselves. Before we talk about the webcomics though, we have to address a phenomenon called guy on guy is hot. A lot of people are familiar with the phenomenon of girl on girl is hot in Western culture, and this is like content where like female characters are like basically making out for the sexual gratification of the people watching it. By the way, the terms guy on guy is hot and girl on girl is hot, I'm pulling them from tvtropes.com and using their definitions. Girl on girl is hot is so prevalent because a lot of the writers of content in pop culture are male, and they're going to cater to a male audience and what male audiences want to see. But in Eastern culture, the opposite is true, but to a lesser extent. The phenomenon of guy on guy is hot is presented for a female audience. There are examples of this in Western culture though, see like Supernatural and Sherlock, and guy on guy is hot is a very, very common trope in webcomics. If you just search up webcomics on the internet, a lot of the links will suggest things like boys love, which is a term for webcomics or content about gay relationships. And if I can, I'll show you the screenshot right here. Another important term to know for this discussion is the word yaoi, which Wikipedia defines as a genre of fictional media originating in Japan that features homoerotic relationships between male characters. Again, there is absolutely no problem with positive LGBT representation in pop culture. In fact, there should be more of it. But there is a problem when you masquerade fetishization of gay relationships under the guise of positive representation, especially to a young audience. And now we can look at the webcomics themselves. A lot of them follow a similar format and have similar contents. The ads of the webcomics themselves are sometimes sexually explicit, feature two male characters, are romantically charged in some way, and enforce gay stereotypes. When I went to boyslove.com, or boyslove, whatever, the link beneath webcomics, here are the images I found, the top 4, and there were a lot more, but I just screenshotted the top 4, and we're going to talk about the stereotypes displayed in these cover images. To understand the stereotypes in these webcomics, we need to know some terms. First, the two male characters are referred to by uke or seme. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing those right, but I promise I'm trying. The uke is the smaller, more feminine male of the pair. They usually have lighter hair and are portrayed as more innocent or inexperienced than the seme. They are also often physically weaker than their counterpart. The seme is the opposite. They tend to follow the more stereotypical definitions of a boy in manga culture. They're pretty stoic, they're reserved, they're protective, they're a little bit more aggressive, and they're definitely stronger physically than the yuke. They're also usually taller, older, more experienced, and have darker hair. However, things that they share are the male characters are usually thin, conventionally attractive, hairless, and light-skinned. Just a note, a lot of characters being light-skinned and hairless is also a thing in most manga, but for here it's especially important. You rarely see a webcomic that deviates from these stereotypes, and most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, adhere to them. And what's important about these stereotypes is that they are stereotypes, and what's even more important is that they're written for a female audience. And they reach that female audience because the majority of people who are reading webcomics are young women. TV Tropes says, Yaoi's main target audience is catered to a heterosexual female demographic and their perspectives of the ideal male figure, which follow the above yaoi stereotypes. These stereotypes are not honest depictions of gay relationship. The definitions of seme and yuke are expectations written by women. Wikipedia adds, it is typically created by women for women and is distinct from homoerotic media marketed to gay men. To further this discussion, we need to define the word fetishize. To fetishize is to make something the object of a sexual fetish. And Wikipedia defines early terminology for the word yaoi. It was used in a self-deprecating manner to refer to amateur fan works that focused on sex to the exclusion of plot and character development. That focused on sex to the exclusion of plot and character development. Now let's revisit the definition of the word fetish. Make something the object of a sexual fetish. Women are creating this content for women to appeal to their sexual fascination with gay relationships. To be very clear, webcomics like these are feeding young women an unrealistic definition of gay relationships and enforcing stereotypes on an already oppressed group, which is quite obviously harmful. This has an effect on real gay people. As always, people will take things that they learn about in literature and apply them to real life. If a young girl sees this content and is reading it over and over again and is getting it suggested to her by the YouTube algorithm, she's going to internalize it and assume that this is what gay relationships look like. It teaches straight women and society at large that gay relationships are only acceptable in one way, when both partners are skinny, light-haired, hairless, conventionally attractive, and conform to the stereotypes of the YAOI and the seme. Broadcasting this to a mainstream audience as the only kind of gay relationship is incredibly harmful because gay people should not have to conform to anyone's stereotypes to be accepted. One very prominent example of this affecting real people was the fan base, or the Dan and Phil fan base. The Dan and Phil fan base was composed of mostly young women, and a lot of the draw for their content was shipping or encouraging a relationship or thinking about a relationship between two people. And in this case, it was two real people. I don't think I need to talk about why it's harmful to ship real people, but it is. Don't do it. So their large, mostly female fan base would make compilations of proof of their relationship, write fan fiction about their relationship, and even directly ask them if they were in a relationship. In one case, I think this is hearsay, but someone tried to contact their relatives to ask if they were in a relationship. This is quite obviously a violation of privacy. If you go to Archive of Our Own, a popular fan fiction site, there are 1,366 works in Dan Howell and Phil Lester content. As far as I know, I think they are in a gay relationship, so the people talking about it were technically right, but the obsession with it and the practical fetishization of their relationship, which is evident in the fact that there's fan fiction of them having sex, is uncalled for and disgusting. Another unfortunate symptom of the widespread gay fetishization on the internet is the correlation of sinning with gay relationships and gay content. One of the comments on the Stop It Mr. Wolf ad says, 197k people have sinned, referencing the amount of people who had seen the video. Often, people playfully correlate the idea of sinning with gay content. The very definition of a yaoi fangirl, fujoshi, loosely translates to rotten girl. This alliance of gay relationships with something rotten or sinful just deepens the stigma around gay relationships as a whole. And you know, if you've been living under a rock for the past eternity, there's a lot of stigma around gay relationships. Having this added barrier of ridiculous, unrealistic stereotypes and an association with something dirty doesn't help the gay community become more accepted in mainstream media or mainstream society. Again, media is a reflection of society's values. If media is portraying gay stereotypes like this, people will believe it's true. Also, as a side note, the ad did get taken down. It was reported for nudity and sexual content. I don't know if other people reported it, but I definitely did. But the ad shouldn't have been on YouTube for as long as it was. It had been posted sometime in early November and it had gotten 200,000 views. To make sure I wasn't crazy, I went and I checked YouTube's rules about this stuff, and they say that non-consensual acts are not allowed on YouTube, which were definitely in the video, And the sexual display of someone's body for gratification purposes is not allowed either, which was also in the video. It really escapes me why this was up on YouTube for as long as it was, but I am glad it got taken down finally. The use of gay relationships as some draw to content just makes a spectacle of something that should not be made a spectacle of. Gay relationships are not special or sinful or anything like that. They're just normal people having a relationship. This ad and the content it draws you to are pretty gross, and it perpetuates and normalizes some really disturbing things. Non-consensual sexual acts, stereotypes about gay men, and the fetishization of gay couples. It suggests that a gay relationship is comprised of two handsome young men engaging in non-consensual sex acts, which is definitely not what gay relationships are. But if people are seeing this, then that's what they're going to assume it is. Obviously, that's not something that should be happening. So in conclusion of my conclusion, it's gross and it needs to stop. I don't know how, and I don't know how to take action against this, but I guess all we can do as a community is report this stuff and try to talk to people if you know that they support content like this, because by supporting that content, you're encouraging the creators to make more. Thank you for watching. I know I've been breaking out in hives steadily throughout the video. It happens when I'm nervous, but I appreciate you clicking and have a great rest of your day. Please wear a mask, stay safe. Thanks.